What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Cards and Coffee. Today we're doing another post-BODE deck profile, and today we're going to be talking about Floowandereeze. Now, like I mentioned before in other deck talks, Burst of Destiny has brought us so many new cards to play with. Not only did it bring forward the Sword Soul strategy, an amazing top tier deck, but in addition, Floowandereeze has made its debut in the same set, and to be completely honest, I think this archetype is really cool. In case you don't know, this deck revolves around normal summoning. Kind of sounds like I'm talking about one of my deck profiles for the progression series I'm doing. But in all seriousness, this deck does a lot more than just normal summon. As a matter of fact, it can normal summon 2, 3, 4, 5 times. The deck is actually pretty crazy. Now, yes, these Floowandereeze effects do lock you out of special summoning for the turn, but again, with all the normal summons, it's really not relevant. This deck, honestly, is really unique. It kind of reminds me of something like a Monarch or a True Draco deck, except the deck revolves around birds. That's so much better, let's be honest. This deck does have a couple things that it struggles against, and in all honesty, we are going to be getting more support in the future, so that's definitely going to help. But for right now, if you tech it out correctly, I really think this deck can have a lot of success. We're going to go through the card by card, explain exactly what I'm playing and why I'm playing it, and along the way, I'll kind of explain what these new cards do as well. That way, by the end of the deck profile, maybe we both can come to a consensus of whether or not this deck is really tier 1. But first, as always, guys, please go grab yourself a cup of coffee or something. That way you guys can sit down and tune in. Thanks, guys. So before I hop into the monsters, just know this deck is full of a lot of level 1 Wing Beast monsters, and they all have their own unique effect when they're normal summon, but if you get to resolve the effect of those monsters, immediately after you can normal summon once again. All the level 1 Floowandereeze have this effect, and it's important to keep in mind because if something were to happen and your monster's effect gets negated, then you also don't get the additional normal summon. Also, technically it's not an additional normal summon, it's just an effect to normal summon. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably like, Justin, what's the difference? Honestly, come on, bro. But the wording on that's actually pretty relevant because if it was just an additional summon, then that would mean I could just normal summon one of my guys, get the effect, maybe activate a spell card, do some searching, and then go back and extra normal summon later. But that's not how it works. After your Floowandereeze effect resolves, you have to normal summon right after you use the effect. There's no saving it for later. So again, it's really not that big of a difference, but you just got to keep that in mind when resolving your effects. Now, for the first monster we're going to talk about, this is pretty much your main go-to card. We're going to be playing 3 copies of Floowandereeze and Robina. Before I get into the effect, I just want to say the art on these cards are so amazing. Just the art alone makes me want to play this deck. What Robina does is, on normal summon, Robina can add any level 4 or lower Wing Beast from your deck, and then immediately after, you can normal summon another Wing Beast from your hand. Now, there is another effect that all these level 1 Floowandereeze also share, that if ever they're sent from the field to the grave, they're banished instead. Now, in most case scenarios, most decks, that's kinda lame, but in this deck, it's actually really insane. The main reason that effect is so good is because whenever you normal summon another Wing Beast, whenever these level 1s are in your banished zone, you can activate the effect to return it to your hand. This is really amazing because more times than not, you're just spamming the field with normal summons and then tributing them off for your boss monsters. So they'll get banished for the tribute summon and their effect will activate because you just normal summoned a Winged Beast. This affects once per turn, so you can't just infinitely loop it, but you can do it on both players' turn, which we'll explain later. But just know this banishing and recursion effect is the main way this deck can not only grind, but just straight out resource all the decks in the meta right now. So that's it for Robina. Just know it's the main searcher in your deck. Oh, and again, remember, whenever you use one of these effects, you can't special summon for the rest of the turn. But again, we don't do that in this deck. After that, we're playing 3 copies of Floowandereeze and Eaglin. This is like your second best searcher. Eaglin basically does the exact same thing as Robina, but instead of searching a level 1 Wing Beast, it searches any Wing Beast that's level 7 or higher. So obviously, it's pretty straightforward what this deck can do. You'll just normal summon the Robina, search the Eaglin, normal summon the Eaglin, and then search one of your boss monsters. You'll tribute both of the Floowandereeze you have on the field as the tribute summon. And again, once you do that, they get banished, and you can either add one of them or both of them from your banished zone back to your hand. It's honestly pretty crazy. And in addition, all your monsters that you're normal summoning have effects that activate on normal summon. So this is pretty crazy because if at any time you have a Floowander that's banished, anytime you normal summon one of your Floowander's to activate its effect, you can activate the banished Floowander monster as Chainlink 2, and then whatever effect you're activating on summon as Chainlink 1, making it to where it's very easy to chain block your monsters from stuff like Ash Blossom, Solemn Strike, you name it. It's honestly pretty crazy how this deck works. And again, just look at the art. It's freaking amazing. After that, we're playing Floowandereeze and Stree. I have to play 2 of this card, not because it's like super amazing or anything, but again, like I mentioned, you have to resolve its first effect to be able to normal summon again after, and getting this card's effect to resolve is pretty easy. On normal summon of Stree, you can banish any card from either player's graveyard, and then of course, normal summon once again after that effect resolves. And like I mentioned, all the level 1s get banished when they leave the field, and can add themselves back to the hand whenever something else is normal summoned. The reason I love Stree is because honestly it's like a pseudo DD Crow that you can summon on your opponent's turn to get rid of stuff. And like I've mentioned before, DPE is an amazing card this format, and if ever your opponent pops one of your cards, all you have to do is get to Stree and then you can banish it from the grave and then the problem's solved. There's also a really cool interaction this card has with one of the other cards in your deck, but we'll talk about that when we get to it. Now, for the last level 1 Floowandereeze, we're playing 1 Floowandereeze and Toucan. What this card does is, on normal summon, you can add any of your banished Floowandereeze cards from your banished zone back to your hand. And then again, all the usual stuff, the extra normal summon, the banished when it leaves the field, and of course, it'll recycle itself whenever you normal summon another bird. The reason you only play one of this is because it's more of a tech choice to kind of recur some resources. And in addition, there's some niche plays you can do it that are pretty unique to what it can specifically do. But one thing to keep in mind with this card is it can recycle any card that's banished that's a Floowandereeze, not just the monsters. That's it for all the little Floowanders. We'll talk about the boss monsters next. So for the boss monsters, we're playing 2 Flowandereeze and Empen. This is like the heart and soul of your deck. So what this card does is, on Tribute Summon, you can add any Flowandereeze spell or trap from your deck to your hand, and then immediately after that effect resolves, you can normal summon again. And it's pretty cool because you can normal summon anything. It doesn't have to be a wing beast. So if you opted to play something like a Dogmatica package in the deck, then you can even normal summon Ecclesia or something. But in the end, I actually cut that package because it wasn't testing as good as I was hoping. This card has 2 other amazing effects while it's on the field. One being any of your opponent's special summoned attack position monsters have its effects negated, which is really crazy because link summoned monsters can't be special summoned in defense. And in addition, you know if your opponent's trying to summon from the extra deck to try to get over your cards, that they're gonna have to put them in defense, so you don't really have to worry about them going for game. In addition, it has a battle effect that whenever it battles something, you can banish a card from your hand to have the current attack of that monster. It's already at 2700, but man, that effect honestly gets over pretty much everything in the game. There is a reason why this is the main boss monster in your deck. It's a Stratos for your spells and traps. You get another normal summon. It's a skill drain on legs, and again, you get to run over anything you can think of in this game by battle. Okay, not anything in the game, but anything relevant. The one downside to this card is it does not banish itself when it leaves the field, but if ever you're in a pinch and you do need to get access to one that's in the grave, late game it's very easy to set up your Stree and your Toucan, so simply just normal summon the Stree, banish your Empen from the grave, and then normal summon the Toucan, and then add the Empen back to your hand, and of course then you can tribute these off and normal summon the Empen again. And then everything will activate. You'll get to search a spell, you'll get to add one of these, or both of them, back to your hand, and you'll get to proceed from there. It's pretty crazy, honestly. And again, that search will be chain blocked by these cards too, so honestly, this deck just has some really crazy effects. Now, after the Empen, the only other boss monster I'm playing is the Ryza, the Mega Monarch. I don't play the Mist Valley Avion card or whatever it is, because honestly, having the Omni Negate's really good in this deck, but more times than not, you want to have the Monarch in your hand. And if you are summoning the Avion, more times than not, it's just because you already had it in hand, or you just had nothing else better to search off of Eaglin's effect. So, I don't know. It's pretty good, and you can even cite it in specific matchups that it's better. But more times than not, I like to just keep it consistent and play these 3. So I'll go ahead and explain Ryza in case you don't know what he does. So one quick thing to note about him is you can tribute summon him with 1 tribute, but that monster you tribute has to be an already already tribute summoned a monster. That comes up sometimes, but honestly, more times than not, your field's full of Floowandereeze anyway, so since he's a winged beast, being searchable by Eaglin, and will trigger all your Flunders when they're banished to add back to hand, on tribute summon, you can target one card on either side of the field and one card in either player's grave, and stack them back on top of the deck in any order. And in addition, if you used a wind monster to tribute summon him, you can target one additional card on the field and then bounce that one to the hand. So not only can you get rid of a card in the grave and potentially 2 cards on your opponent's side of the field, but more times than not, what you'll do is you'll hit a card in the grave, hit a card on the field, and then bounce the Mega Monarch back to your hand for the next turn. It's honestly really insane because you can tribute summon multiple times on your opponent's turn as well. So not only will this card help break your opponent's board going second, but during your opponent's turn, it makes for a really insane interruption. Because again, as long as you're tributing a wind monster for a summon, he's just going to keep coming back to your hand for you to use over and over and over again. And if you stick around to the end of the video, like always, I have some combos that I'll show you guys. Nothing too crazy, nothing too flashy, but it'll definitely give you an idea of what the heck this deck does and how crazy Ryza is. After that, I do play one more Winged Beast monster, and it is the Barrier Statue of the Storm Winds. I'm sure a lot of you guys know what this card does, but in case you don't, basically it locks both players out of special summoning monsters, except for winds. Again, we don't really special summon, so this really isn't a restriction anyway, but it's a level 4 that you can search off of Robina and then additional normal summon. It's just like Ryza, it's super easy to abuse, and you can even summon it on your opponent's turn, so yeah, it's kind of unfair sometimes. Now, that's it for the birds, but I am playing one more monster. I am playing 3 copies of Dimensional Shifter. Just being a hand trap that's a macro cosmos for the turn is honestly insane. So many decks will fold to this effect, and this card has no negative repercussions to your deck at all. Honestly, it actually helps it because you can even pitch it at the start of your turn, making it to where your opponent can activate something like Effect Veiler. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, this card can be a little hot and cold, just because whenever you draw this card after turn 1, typically you'll have cards in the graveyard, so then you won't be able to activate its effect in the hand, so it could kind of be dead. But Floowandereeze honestly really doesn't care because even if you have spell cards in your grave, Floowandereeze and Stree can banish any card from either player's graveyard. Since all your monsters banish themselves anyway, it's pretty typical you don't have any in your graveyard, but if ever you have one of your search spells in the graveyard, you can just normal summon this and banish it, emptying out your graveyard for the next turn, making your Dimensional Shifter live to skip your opponent's turn. Not only that, but like I mentioned before, summoning these Floowandereeze monsters on both players' turns is very easy. So if you have 2 spells in your graveyard, then you can simply summon Stree, banish 1, tribute it off to banish it, add it back to your hand, and then on your opponent's turn, we'll be able to normal summon it again, banishing the last spell in your graveyard, making way for Dimensional Shifter to be live again. Oh, and of course, if you open Double Shifter, then you'll pitch 1 at the start of your turn, and then later you'll just summon the Stree to banish the one from your grave, making your second one live again. Normally, I really don't like Dimensional Shifter just because, again, if you don't see it turn 1, it's kind of bad, but in this deck, it's very easy to abuse this, so you better believe I'm definitely maxing out on this card in this particular deck. That's it for the monsters. Hopping to the spells, we're on the main field spell of the deck, Floowandereeze and Magnificent Map. You can reveal any of your level 1 Floowandereeze in your hand, and then search your deck for a different Floowander and banish it. Then immediately after that effect resolves, you get to normal summon. This is really amazing for the deck because again, it gives you an additional normal summon. On top of that, it basically gets you any level 1 like Robina or Eaglin that you might need into your banish zone, so that once you normal summon the level 1 you revealed, you're essentially searching out the missing level 1 you needed for your combo. This card isn't exactly Rhoda, but it's essentially a 2-card Rhoda, I guess you could call it. Not only that, but it has an effect on your opponent's turn, where if ever your opponent normal summons a monster, then immediately after, you can normal summon a monster. It's pretty crazy. Imagine you normal summon something like Mo Yi. You reveal a card and get a token, but then my field spell activates and I get to normal summon Robina. And then Robina's effect will activate and I can search the barrier statue and then immediately after normal summon the barrier statue. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. This is only one of the ways you get to play on your opponent's turn. The trap card, which we'll talk about later, is probably my favorite way to interact with your opponent on their turn. But just know this card really helps the deck in so many different ways. You have to max out on it. After that, we are on some consistency cards. We are playing 3 Pot of Prosperity. This card is truly amazing in this deck. Honestly, I like this card in a bunch of decks, but this card is really great because you really don't use your extra deck at all. So you can freely banish 6 every time. In addition, there's literally 1 card in your deck that lets you draw cards, and it honestly doesn't always come up anyway, so there's literally no downside to playing this card. After that, we get to play 3 Pot of Duality, just another consistency card. This card's really great because just like Prosperity, you can reveal the top 3 of your deck and add any one of them to your hand. The downside to this card is now you can't special summon for the turn. Yeah. Kind of a bummer, right? Now, of course, that downside is completely irrelevant in this deck when you just normal summon a million times anyway. So pairing this with Prosperity is really amazing. It doesn't count as a draw, so why not? Especially when you open 2, it's pretty crazy. Being able to see the top 9 cards of your deck, you can almost guarantee you're going to see exactly what you need. After that, we're playing 1 Terraforming, again, just to get to your field spells. And after that, we're playing 1 Gold Sark. Gold Sark is basically the field spell. I mean, it doesn't get you another normal summon, but you can banish any of the birds you need from your deck, and then as long as you have another bird in your hand to normal summon, you can use its effect in the banish zone to add it to your hand, and it's essentially like searching whatever bird you need, just like the field spell. After that, we're playing 1 copy of Floowandereeze and Unexplored Winds. I like to compare it to like a Cosmo Town combined with a Monarch Stormforth. Basically, if ever you were to tribute summon a monster that requires 2 tributes, instead of tributing your 2 monsters, you can send 1 monster you control and any card your opponent controls to the graveyard as replacement for the tribute fodder for the tribute summon. It's awesome because it's still considered a tribute summon, and the sending effect does not target. So you can send Dragoons to the graveyard, you can send back row. Honestly, you can send whatever the heck you want, and that's what makes this card so amazing. Just a generic out to anything in the game. It's pretty crazy. And like I mentioned, its second effect is almost like a Cosmo Town. You don't get to add your banish to your hand, but what it does is you can put Wing Beast from your hand back to the bottom of the deck, and then however many you did, that's how many cards you get to draw. The effect doesn't come up that much, but you do have to keep in mind it does conflict with Pot of Prosperity. But again, honestly, it only really comes up in the late game or if you're like really digging for a card you need. So that's it for the Floowander cards and the consistency cards we're playing. After that, I'm playing a lot of spells to help me play the game, and the first one I'm going to show you is probably going to get people to roll their eyes, but I'm playing 2 copies of Mystic Mind. Now, I know this card is pretty degenerate, and honestly, it can make some really unfun gameplay, but I have to be real, this card is really good in your deck. More times than not, you don't use it to just stall the game out and try to win by deck out. This card honestly acts more like a Dark Ruler or a Skill Drain, because if your opponent's field is full of monsters, then you can just start normal summoning your birds to get to your Ryza, tribute summon the Ryza, bounce the field, and then the Ryza goes back to your hand, and now your field's empty. And if you left a monster on your opponent's side of the field, then you can basically pass and do the same thing next turn. There's a lot of really cool ways you can abuse this card, and honestly, when it's used against you, it can also be pretty frustrating. But more times than not, this card is very easy to abuse, and worst case scenario, if your opponent has a bunch of negates on the board, just activating this card can obviously bait a negate. After that, I'm on a good chunk of quick play spells. I'm playing 3 copies of Book of Moon. I'm pretty sure most Floowander players are on 3 of this, and I honestly think they should be. Book of Moon, honestly, is one of my favorite quick play spells of all time, so having the opportunity to play 3 of it in this deck is super nostalgic for me. Honestly, I wish I had 3 of these in the progression series, but yeah, I'm not that lucky. You should go and check it out if you haven't seen it already. Obviously, Book of Moon can bait negates. It's a good defensive card by setting your opponent's monsters. But the main reason we're playing Book of Moon is because Effect Veiler and Infinite Impermanence are running through the meta everywhere. So if ever you were to normal summon one of your little birds, activate the effect to maybe search. If your opponent chains Effect Veiler or Infinite Impermanence, you can chain Book of Moon from your hand, setting your monster. That way your opponent's hand trap will resolve without effect. It's pretty amazing. So not only will you get your search from something like Robina, but you still gain the additional normal summon that you can immediately do after the effect resolves. It's almost like you're playing 3 more Called by the Grave for the deck. It's pretty crazy. Now, speaking of Called by the Grave, of course, we're on the 1 Called by the Grave. Hand traps do affect this deck, so you have to respect them, and that's primarily why we play the 3 Book of Moon. But in addition to Called by the Grave, we are also playing 2 copies of Forbidden Chalice. Chalice is just one of my favorite cards in the meta right now. Just super versatile, being able to use it on your turn or your opponent's turn. But again, this trades 1-for-1s for any negates on the field, or worst case scenario, you can just set it as a defensive card, almost like your own impermanence for your opponent. Now, since we're playing Chalice, I think it's pretty straightforward to see that in the traps, we're playing 3 infinite impermanents. This card's really amazing, especially drawing it as a 6 card. Again, just like Chalice, trading 1-for-1 negates or interruptions. It's really good. In addition, if you wanted to use it as a hand trap, it actually is really good because it doesn't conflict with Dimensional Shifter. So not only is it a good Chalice, but being a hand trap that doesn't lose to Shifter makes it to where it's a staple 3 in my eyes. Now, for the last card in the deck, we are on 1 Floowandereeze in Dreaming Town. This trap card is one of my favorite cards in the deck. This is almost like the Monarch trap card that'll let you tribute summon on your opponent's turn, but instead of tribute summoning, it lets you normal summon a level 4 or lower wing beast from your hand. So, in case you don't know what it does, basically, during the main phase, after the card resolves, you can normal summon a level 4 or lower wing beast from your hand. This is really amazing because, again, once you start normal summoning one of your Floowandereeze, you'll just be able to constantly summon a bunch of wing beasts from your hand during your opponent's turn, one after the other after the other. You can summon Barrier Statue with it, or you can even just summon Robina to search Eaglin, and then summon Eaglin, and then search Ryza, and then summon Ryza on your opponent's turn. And again, you'll get to bounce 2 cards on the top of the deck, and then you'll bounce the Ryza back to your hand to do it again. In addition, this card has a graveyard effect where if ever you tribute for a level 7 or higher monster, you can banish it from the graveyard and flip all your opponent's monsters to face down defense. And in addition, since it banishes itself, it makes it so easy to add back to your hand with Toucan. That way you can repeat the same process for the turn after. So crazy. Alright guys, I'm going to show you 2 really quick and really simple combos, and at the end, you'll probably look at the board and go, well, that doesn't seem like a lot. But afterwards, I'll show you what the heck you can do with all the interactions that you give yourself. So starting it off with the first combo, we're just going to do it with 1 copy of Robina. First things first, obviously, you're just going to normal summon the Robina to add a level 4 lower wing beast from your deck to your hand. In this case, we're going to search Eaglin, add it to hand, and then immediately after, normal summon the Eaglin from the hand, activating its effect to add a level 7 or higher wing beast to our hand. In this case, we're going to add Empen now. And again, after that effect resolves, you can immediately tribute these off to normal summon your Floowandereeze and Empen. And now that you've tribute summoned Empen, you can activate your monsters in the banish zone to add themselves back to the hand. If you really wanted to, you can add both, but in my personal opinion, I think you should only add 1, just because you always want 1 in the banish zone to constantly chain block your monster's effects as you're summoning more and more birds. So, chain link 1, Empen will search a spell or trap, and chain link 2, I'm going to just add something like the Robina back to hand. So, Robina goes to hand, and then we're going to add the lone copy of Dream Town to our hand. Now, after that, we're just going to set the trap card face down. If you have any other interruptions like Book of Moon or Called By or Chalice or Imperm, you can set those cards as well just for added interruption. And that's it. That's your first turn combo. So let me break this down exactly what you got in front of you. Again, you have a skill drain on legs that can run over anything by battle. If we wanted to, we could have normal summoned something else, just because this gave us an additional normal summon, but in this case, we just opted not to do that. But the main interruption you have is now, during your opponent's main phase, you can activate your Dream Town, allowing you to normal summon the Robina on your opponent's turn. A Robina's effect will activate, and so will Eaglin. Chainlink 2, Eaglin will go to hand, and then Chainlink 1, you can now add a 4 or lower. Since we already have the Eaglin in this case, you can really add anything you want. If you want to lock him out of special summoning, then obviously you just add the Barrier Statue, and then on resolution, you can just normal summon the Barrier Statue. In this case, since I don't have another name outside of Eaglin, I'm actually just going to add one of them to my hand now. And then, of course, Robina's effect resolves, so I get to normal summon an Eaglin again. And now Eaglin's effect will activate, and I get to search Ryza from deck to hand. And now Eaglin's resolved, so you can normal summon once again, tributing your 2 birds off to now tribute summon Ryza, the Mega Monarch. So now you did tribute a wind monster, so Ryza will gain its additional bounce, now being able to bounce a card from your opponent's grave and field to the top of the deck, and in addition, being able to bounce the Ryza back to your hand to be used for another turn. So you can add one of your birds back to your hand. In this case, I'll probably add Robina. And now Ryza can top deck 2 of your opponent's cards, and Ryza will bounce himself back to the hand for the next turn. So you got a skill drain, you just bounce 2 cards, and look at all the follow-up you have for next turn. It's pretty crazy. So for the last combo now, all you really need is the field spell, and any one of your Flowandereeze names will at least let you combo. But if you open with either Eaglin or Robina, you can make a pretty cool board. In this case, we'll just say we have Eaglin to start for the turn. Now by itself, Eaglin really doesn't do anything in this hand, but since we have the field spell, we can now activate it, activating the effect to reveal the Eaglin in our hand, and then banishing Robina from our deck. Immediately after that resolves, we'll get another normal summon. So we'll normal summon the Eaglin, activating the Robina as Chainlink 2 and the Eaglin as Chainlink 1. Again, chain blocking from like Ash Blossom. Robina will go to hand, and then Eaglin will search M-Pen. After that resolves, you get your additional normal summon, and you can normal summon Robina. Robina's effect will activate, and then this time we're going to go ahead and grab the barrier statue. After that resolves, again, we get one more normal summon. We'll tribute these two off and summon M-Pen. Now that M-Pen's summoned, we've already activated Robina, but that's fine. We normally only activate one anyway, so we'll activate Eaglin as Chainlink 2 and M-Pen as Chainlink 1. So now Eaglin will go to hand, and in this case, I think I'm just going to add another Dreamtown to hand. Now we do get an additional normal summon because of M-Pen, and technically we haven't even used our regular normal summon yet. So immediately after M-Pen resolves, we'll go ahead and normal summon the barrier statue. And just like the last combo, we'll set the trap card and pass the turn. This is basically the same exact field as last time, except for now you can summon twice on your opponent's turn. Once when they normal summon, and a second time anytime during the main phase. So, hypothetically, if they normal summoned on their turn, then you can just normal summon Eaglin. Robina will get added back to your hand. Eaglin will then search Ryza. The Eaglin resolves, I guess you can normal summon the Robina, searching any of your other Floowandereeze. In this case, I guess I'll grab Stree. Then immediately after, you can tribute summon your Ryza to the field, tributing off your little guys, activating the Eaglin, adding it back to hand, and then Ryza's effect will then bounce two of your opponent's cards and bounce the Monarch back to hand again. So now if by some miracle of a way your opponent was able to summon more monsters, even though they're under a barrier statue, because maybe they had droplets or Dark Ruler or something, still in the main phase, you can activate the Dreamtown, allowing you once again to normal summon a level 4 or lower from your hand, activating the effect to hit something out of the grave, and then immediately after be able to tribute summon for Ryza again. Now you can tribute both of these, or really you can even just tribute the one, because this is a tribute summon monster. But again, this is a wind, so again you'll spin two cards, whether it's two set back row or two monsters because they're trying to go off because barrier was negated. And then once again, Ryza will go back to your hand. This is just a very small example of what the heck this deck can do. And honestly, there's probably even better things you can do that I didn't show you. But I'm just hoping these combos scratch the surface of exactly what this deck can do. That way, if ever you guys wanted to play this deck, you'll have a good place to start. Now, that's all the time I have today, guys. Again, thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate all the support. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. The channel's growing way faster than I ever thought it would. And let me know what you think. Is this deck tier 1 or is it all hype? Personally, at the end of the day, I know I love the artwork, and for what this deck can do, it's pretty insane. Here's hoping to see you guys next episode. Peace.